We are right around verse 12. And I'm telling you, we almost done because Jeremiah says it all. I'm just going to give you guys a couple of words that may not just jump out at you right away. And we're going to talk a little bit about this drunkenness, because that's the problem. We drunk. Everybody's so worried about telling people, don't drink, don't have wine, don't drink. Not saying you should or you shouldn't. We'll talk about that in a second. Don't drink, don't get drunk. And y'all was like, oh, it's a whole nother type of drunkenness going on. Watch this. Verse 12 says, therefore thou shalt speak unto them this word. Thus saith the Elohim, Yah Elohim of Israel, every bottle shall be filled with wine. And then they're going to say back to you, don't we know that wine go in bottles? Don't we know that every bottle will be filled with wine? Don't we know after harvest, the next place that wine goes is in a bottle? You didn't, are you Drew? He says, tell them this. Now, bottles, and that's why I use the picture that we saw. I'll put it back up. So you had two different kinds of bottles. You had bottles that were made of skin, and they look like literally like the animal, and they would tie, they would clean it out, and they would sew up the feet, and they would sew up the parts where, it could come out, and they would take the feet part and they would hold it up, and then they would cork it, or they would take one in like the neck part and they would cork it and sew up around it. Okay. That was one type of bottle. The other type of vessel, this one here in the text, is called nabal, right? It's twofold. It means a vessel, but it also means foolish, right? Foolish. And they were clay pots. They were clay taken from the ground, and they were made into pots. Saw a bunch of these in every excavation site. When you over at Megiddo, they actually have they found like them all the way fully intact. And they look very similar to these. Interestingly enough, the clay vessel, the container, mimics the clay of, like the skin, right? So it was a very interesting picture that Yah was painting. He says, hey, the wine bottles, the wine clay jars, they put water, different stuff in here, but in this case, the wine, he says, they're going to be filled with wine. And he said, and they're going to say back to you, do we not know certainly that every bottle shall be filled with wine? He said, then you going to say to them, right? So Yah is giving a rundown of the conversation. Thus saith Yah, behold, I will fill all the inhabitants of this land, even the kings that sit upon David's throne, and the priests and the prophets and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with drunkenness. He says, I get it. You're right. Just like those clay vessels, just like those wine skins get filled with wine, I'm going to fill you with wine. And he says, I'm going to go on a little bit further, just because we're going to spend some time on this drunkenness. And he says, and I'm going to take them and I'm going to dash them like clay vessels, one against another, even fathers and the sons together, saith Yah. And he says, right here, it says, I will not pity, nor spare, nor have mercy. What he says is, I'm not going to have compassion. I'm not going to act compassionately. So sometimes I could not have compassion, but I'll do the compassionate thing. He's like, I'm not going to have compassion. I'm not going to act compassionately. He says, I'm going to behave dysfunctionally toward you. We all know that. That's like, I'm going to show you something. I don't want to hear it. I don't care when you come to me. I'm going to be the opposite of Tov to you. And he says, I'm going to destroy you. All right. So when he says this word drunkenness, every time I read this, all the other stuff stood out, but this drunkenness, I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean in this context? We know what it means to be drunk, right? We all do. But because Hebrew and the language is the way that it is, Yah is, of course, he is the word, but just a master with words. So I'm going to take you on the journey. Just peep this. So let's talk a little bit about being drunk. What does it mean scientifically? Scientifically, what does it mean to be drunk? So most people know when you get drunk, you lose coordination, all these other things happen. That's part of it. That's part of being drunk. That's a little bit of it. But the part of being drunk that is being expressed here is this word shikarun, which comes from the root word shakar, which means to get drunk and express unreal thoughts. And it also means to be intoxicated. Intoxicated. So a professional drinker, we call a drunkard, right? Somebody who does something professionally, somebody who does something habitually. Intoxication does two things. It is a depressant. When we're intoxicated, it depresses our body. And it is going to leave visible symptoms that show you a person is drunk. So what happens? When you start drinking and consuming alcohol, your liver begins to break the alcohol down. That's what your liver is for. If I said liver and you're already there, hallelujah, you can start shouting right now. We'll meet you on the other side. All right, your liver begins to break it down. An enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase is responsible for breaking down alcohol into dehyde. And that is further broken down to acetic acid. Getting drunk occurs when you consume alcohol faster than this process can break it down. That's what drunkenness is. All right. When you get drunk, immediately dopamine is released, and that gives you the feeling of a reward. So I'm doing something and it makes me feel calm. It makes me feel relaxed, and dopamine is released. But what is actually happening is alcohol increases the effects of the GABA. It's an inhibitory, something that stops something, inhibits it, neurotransmitter. And when it increases the GABA or the GABA, the brain responds by slowing neurotransmission, and that's why you get slurred speech. Alcohol also affects your limbic system, which is responsible for emotional responses. So it results in a loss of inhibition, where people just say or do anything. They don't think about how it's going to make other people feel, right? It's part of drunkenness. You lose your coordination. Then you get an increase in urination, which also leads to dehydration. And then you get what we call a hangover. So I'm going to go into a little bit further. Alcohol is made up of small molecules that dissolve in the fat, water, and cells in your body. Our body is mainly made up of fat, water, and cells. Your liver processes, I said that liver word again, processes alcohol, but alcohol affects other organs too, such as your stomach, your pancreas, and your brain. Alcohol makes you feel intoxicated because of the way it affects your brain, and it changes the way that your brain cells function. So you have alcohol made of two things, remember, grapes, fermented grapes, and they can make other things, but vodka, like that's made of potatoes. Did anybody know that? I thought those were, yeah, potatoes, vodka. And so your bourbons, that brown liquor we like, the brown folks like, that's grapes. That's still made out of grapes too. All right, so the parts of your body that process alcohol, your stomach, your pancreas, your small intestines. That area Hebraically is known as the seat of your emotion. That's where it sits. So that's why people say your gut is off balance. When we feel nervous, we get like the BGs, you get the flutters, that's where your emotion sits. It's not in your heart here. It's down here in your gut. That's why I can't eat. My stomach is nervous. That's where it is. So it begins to affect there. And then obviously your brain, which is the authority within. That's the thing that controls everything. And that's that house. So each of these organs have special enzymes. They break down alcohol. I'm going to get to the part where it talks about the brain and it talks about how when you drink, your blood vessels absorb the alcohol into your bloodstream. When you drink and you have food in your stomach, the enzymes in your stomach, right, break down the alcohol itself. So that's why people, if you drink and you have eaten, you don't feel drunk, or it takes you a lot longer to feel the effects of the alcohol, because your stomach and the enzymes in your stomach are actually doing the digesting. But if your stomach is empty, then the alcohol goes straight to your small intestine, which then releases the alcohol directly into your bloodstream. The blood, right there, the blood transports the alcohol directly to your brain. Your brain is surrounded by a water membrane. The water then facilitates the alcohol going directly to your brain, which then shuts down your control center. That's what it does. That is literally the science of intoxication. So when Yah says, keep this. So when Yah says, you know what I'm gonna do to you? This is cold-blooded. It's not because, we're disobedient. He says, I'm gonna make your whole vessel full of wine. I'm going to make you drunk. Everybody, you're not gonna react right. Your emotions gonna be all over the place. You're not gonna even be able to take it in. Why? One, because this is what you wanted. And the word for the vessel, he says, I'm gonna consecrate you to drunkenness. The way you didn't want to be consecrated to me and be vigilant and mindful and sharp amongst your enemies, I'm going to make you like a drunkard. That's an easy person to beat up too, because you can't move right. You can't do nothing right. He says, I am literally going to remove your kavod. The word for liver, just show it so y'all don't think I'm crazy, because I'm not. He says, I am going to, here we go. He's going to go on. He's going to say, literally, that part in your body that filters out the waste, the foreign substances, regulates your blood sugar levels, and also because copper, how about this? Copper and iron are stored in the liver, and it creates necessary nutrients for the body. And guess where it pushes it through? The bloodstream. If you know a little something about Torah, the life is in the blood. And it takes the liver to do the purification and to do the regulation so that the balance of life stays in the blood. But if the liver gets overworked, then guess what? The whole body starts shutting down. It starts letting through things that shouldn't be let through. It stops filtering substances. So I'm gonna give you the word for liver now. I'm gonna give you the word for liver. It's the Hebrew word for glory is the word for liver. It's kavod. The liver in your body is called your kavod. It's one of the things that we do not eat, by the way. That is a thing that's sacrificed to Yah, because that is his function amongst Israel. He is literally the kavod. He's the liver of Israel. I keep your life force regulated. I keep your blood sugar regulated. I keep foreign substances and the enemies and everybody out of the body. And I provide nutrients because, your body naturally in your blood, because the sin is corrupt. So I'm constantly filtering your body, constantly filtering the body. As long as I stay the glory, then guess what? You good. But guess what? If I fill you up with drunkenness and then remove your glory, remove the kavod, then guess what? You'll die. You'll be drunk. If you've ever seen somebody, and don't want to be insensitive at all to anybody who has liver functioning problems. And I don't want you to go back and say, Hulda said my liver is messed up because I don't serve. Yeah, there's a bunch of free radicals and other reasons why. Don't go there. But if you know somebody who has to receive dialysis, It's because their liver can't do this function. It's overworked. And so it's releasing toxins at a rate too rapid in the body. And we don't call it drunkenness, but it causes similar effects as that. So you lose eyesight. You can lose function in your brain. You can lose, your blood is then toxic to your body. And so you have to have this filtered. You have to have your blood filtered because your liver can't do the process. So what are the two distinct functions of a liver? The liver oxygenates the blood and it produces nutrient-rich blood to all the organs in your body. So Yah is saying, he's like, my glory is what's keeping you afloat. Not minding other people's business. Your obedience allows my glory to filter out not only your sin, but to keep your enemy off of you. That's what your obedience does. It allows my glory to dwell with you. So verse 15, he said, I'm gonna destroy them. He knows based upon the process of making them drunk that it'll be their destruction. So verse 15, he says, hear ye, Shema, and give ear, Ozen, you get two of them, be not proud, for Yah hath spoken. He says, don't be proud. The word here is to be high and exalted and to get courageous all of a sudden. You know, don't flex bad. You don't want to be like, I'm good. He's like, don't do that. Do not do this. He says, do not become arrogant. Do not become haughty. In Ezekiel 28:2, the prophet speaks to a wicked person and says, let's just read it. Because, you know, we have the tendency, we don't see it. And be like, I would never do anything like that. Says, the word of Yah came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say to the prince of Tyrus, thus saith Yah Elohim, because your heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am Elohim. I sit in the seat of Elohim in the midst of the sea. Yet thou art a man and not Elohim. Thou set thine heart as the heart of Elohim. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches and gotten gold and silver into the treasures. By the great wisdom and by the traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of your riches. Therefore saith Yah Elohim, because you have set your heart as the heart of Elohim, behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile your brightness. It starts at home, though. He's saying this. He's like, no one. He said, do not lift yourself up. Don't say, no, I'm good. I'm wise. I'm smart. I'm God. I'm Elohim. He was like, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. He said, do not think because I proclaim this, you can find a way out of it except through me. I'll kill you. Isaiah 3:16. I feel like this verse is often used very, very abusive, but we're gonna read it. We're gonna read it. Verse 3:16. It says, moreover Yah saith, behold, daughters of Zion, the daughters of Zion are haughty. It says, they've lifted themselves up. They've taken courage. They're arrogant. We cannot begin as we wake up, especially in the land of our captivity, to start taking on dispositions that Yah hates. You want to talk about abomination? Some abominations ain't even worth mentioning. This whole food thing, it's not worth a conversation. It's not food for you, period. We're not going to keep dwelling on it, right? This is not a thing. So we keep picking on that. But you know what the big issue right now amongst us as a people is? Pride. Pride. And we're very, 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 what's the word? We want to put our issues on other people. I'm like this because of this. And I'm like this because of this. And if these people wasn't like this, and if it wasn't systemic this, and if it wasn't da-da-da-da-da. And if you go back through history and just check our track record, even after the 400 years, right? Even after the 200 years in slavery, When we got out, we still ate the same stuff. We still acted the same way. We still served the same gods. We still serve the gods of our enemies. You cannot keep saying it's somebody else's fault. We built up cities and Yah turned around and said, I'm gonna tear them down. The same thing kept happening. White people destroyed Black Wall Street. No, y'all was trading pigs. Let's go there. You guys had unclean practices. Can we look at the things that when we got ahead, we never actually turned back toward Yah. We still wanted to operate in our same ways. So yeah, if we were completely obedient, no, we weren't. We were still doing things. You had people still selling their brothers. You had people creating unjust weights. You had people stealing land. You had our people having people share a crop and stealing from them. Tell the truth. We didn't do it in righteousness. So we keep ending up back in the same place over and over and over and over and over again, because when we get lifted up by Yah, then we want to lift ourselves up above one another. It's a problem. No man, no woman is Yah. Scripture says, who am I to judge another man's servant? Nobody. So we'll go back to it. Haughty, he said, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, they're arrogant, and walk with stretched forth necks. And oh, if you look at us now, oh my God, it's worse than it's ever been. Ever, 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 ever. Wanton eyes, walking and menacing as they go, making a tinkling with their feet. Therefore, and has Yah's word ever failed? No. Therefore, underneath that front lace wig, you ain't got no edges. And underneath, and he says, you will smite the scab of the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Yah will discover their secret parts. Got more diseases, got more stuff going on. In that day, Yah will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments around their feet and their big old bottoms. They not gonna save you. They're not gonna do it. The chains and the bracelets and the mufflers and the bonnets and the ornaments of the legs and the headbands and the tablets and the earrings and the rings and the nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel and the mantles and the wimples and the crisping pins. These are all European things. So all that stuff that you use to make you look good. The glasses and the fine linen and the hoods and the veils, because y'all hoes be still wearing head wraps, is true. And I said it and I don't take it back. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be a stink. You got more honey pot and all this stuff. Why? He's like, I told you can't be passing that thing around to everybody. It don't work like that. And he said, so then guess what? You're going to pass it around, then you're going to kill the babies, then that tight waist going to turn into a girdle that is rent. And instead of well-set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher, you like tight, a girdle of sackcloth and burning instead of beauty. Oh wait, we ain't gonna stop there. And thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in war, and her gates shall lament and mourn, and she shall be desolate and shall sit upon the ground. This is what he said. That is the byproduct. People take that all out of proportion. When they left Egypt, they had stuff. Yeah, it's like, you use the stuff I give you, the gold and the stuff to make you beautiful, to show that you have a good Elohim and that you're prosperous, and you use it to go hoeing. That was not what it was for. So that's why he talks against it. It wasn't because we weren't supposed to have nice things. He said, you cannot be using the good things that I give you to go hoe for the other people. It doesn't work like that. That's so you can sit as a daughter of Zion, as one well kept by the king. She is untouchable. You can only go through the king to get to her. She is only set in place for his glory. That's why. But you take all the good and all the wealth that I pour into you, and you use it to literally throw it back in my face. That's Jeremiah, right? He says it over and over again. Found your skirts over your head. You got the blood of the poor innocents on them. I didn't see the bottom of your feet, meaning you all flipped up and bent black and busting it down and wide open and all the other stuff that they say nowadays. That's what he's talking about. He's like, that is not why you are blessed. You're using your beauty. You're using your body to attract wickedness, when that was supposed to be a diamond and a ruby in the crown of Yah, a girdle around him, showing what he can do for you if you stay attached to him. There's nothing wrong with beauty. But when beauty is used to attract wickedness, Yah is like, I'll flip it upside down. Yeah, I'll flip it upside down. That's just what it was. It's just what it is. And if anybody wants to argue, go look at Rebecca, go look at Sarah. Rebecca got gold and everything else when Abraham sent looking for a wife. That was not a problem. But do you think Rebecca was going to go and take that gold and then go find her a Canaanite man and bust him wide open? She'd be dead. That's just what it was. It's just what it was. He said the haughtiness is the problem. He said you got pride. That's pride. See, people don't think about that as pride. So then you look and you say, yeah, so mad. It was Pride Month. And I'm like, y'all, Pride Month every month, because what you're doing in your haughtiness is pride. That looks the same exact way as homosexuality. Yeah, it's the same thing. That haughty spirit, that what they call the whore sport, that is the same exact thing as a person dressing up and being transgender before. Yeah, it's an abomination. It don't look no different to him. So you're like, well, at least Cardi B like boys. And he's like, I don't care. That's an abomination to me. He's like, I hate pride. He calls it an abomination. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Because you know what it means? It means that you don't have anybody you have to answer to. Everybody's all ticked off at old boy who's married to the girl that just had the baby, Keke Palmer, because he was like, you a mom. Everybody's like, how can he talk? He's shaming her. He's the like, wow, that's no accountability. Why? Because pride, clearly she made that baby all by herself. That's her body and her baby. And now it's like, no. Everyone has accountability. And pride is when a person acts like they have no accountability. And when you act like you have no accountability, you're not accountable to Yah either. Ain't nobody tell me nothing. Okay. And if you want to know the end result of that type of pride, it's interesting because this was one of the guys who everybody, including Samuel, was rooting for. This dude got Saul. So Saul was interesting because Saul had a fragile sense of self. He's a big dude. He was tall, head and shoulders above people. The word here for pride is used synonymous with Saul, gives you a physical picture. Says when and they ran and fetched him because remember Saul was hiding in the stuff. He was hiding he was hiding. And when he stood among the people, he was higher. That's a picture of the word for pride, means to be lifted up. He was higher than any of the people from his shoulders upward. He was, like we say, shoulders and head and shoulders taller than all the people. That's an actual description. But then you also get in him, his fragile sense of self made him arrogant and prideful before Yah. And then he also fell because he followed after his own self. So going back to Jeremiah chapter 13, Yah was like, hey, do not hear ye and give ear, verse 15, and be not proud, for Yah hath spoken. He was like, do not act arrogantly. Do not act like you have no head over you. Do not act like you're better than people. Do not exalt yourself. Do not forget where you came from. Do not forget what I've already forgiven you for. He says, verse 16, give kavod, the word for liver, give glory to Yah, your Elohim, before he calls darkness. He's like, do it before darkness comes. The word for darkness, there's like the idea of just dark where you can't see. And before your feet stumble upon the dark mountains. It's interesting that Jeremiah gives this description after he comes out of Ein Parat, because Ein Parat was considered one of the places where you would understand the picture of the valley of the shadow of death. So it's a very, very deep valley. And of course, when the sun sets, it sets at the lowest point first, right? Like, because it goes behind the mountain. And so people on the coast, it's still sunny. But if you're in a mountain or in a valley area, it gets dark down at the bottom. And what happens when it gets dark in a place like Ein Parat? Well, I've been there. Down where the river is where all the vegetation and where all the animals are and where all the water is. Then guess what comes out of the caves? Well, in that time, the lions and the mountain lions and the small lions and the foxes come to eat. There was this little, like, it was like a giant, not a rat, but it was like a tree squirrel walking, scared the bejesus out of me. I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to be down here by myself, climbing through the, there are by water are where the things are. So you could see the picture in Jeremiah's mind where he's walked through this place in the daytime, but from Anathoth to down there, I drove. It's you, if you walk up and back, at some point you'll be walking in the night. And so his mind picture of what it's like to stumble as it begins to get dark, it's hard to walk on the side of a mountain in the daytime when you can no longer see your feet and what's in front of you. And then you have the heightened senses of your spidey sense that says there's other stuff out here, not just me. Guess what? It's not easy to move. He says, you need to give Yah glory before the sun go down, before you can't see no more, before you become vulnerable to prey, because that's what was going to happen when these other nations came. Remember, Babylon is like a lion in how they paint themselves. He says, and before your feet stumble upon dark mountains. And he says, and do it while you can still look for light, before he turns this place into the shadow of death. What does that mean? Before you die in the darkness, and guess what? Don't forget, and you're drunk. And you're not thinking right. And because of your pride, guess what else pride does? What sort of happened to Saul at the end of his life? That pride got to him, not just because he was tall, started getting paranoid. There's a big thing going on right now, and we'll finish up on verse 17, but I'm going to point this out. There's a lot of talk about narcissism. I mean, if you guys have been online, you see it all over. It's real, but the Bible has a term for it. It's called pride. That's what it is. The root of it is exactly that. But see, we only see pride as a person who is, they just think they're better than other people. Pride is deeper than that. Pride is an abomination. It's a sickness. It doesn't allow you to be wrong. You will lie. You will connive. You will put people down. You don't want to be vulnerable, all of which are very, very vulnerability and being able to be talked to and being able to change are very, very important parts of being a human. Narcissism is insolent pride. It's wrathful pride. It's the type of pride that when it is triggered, it makes me angry at other people instead of at myself. We keep looking at people, but there's narcissism, if you want to use that term. There's wrathful pride within our nation because we don't want to accept the consequence of our disobedience and we don't want to mind our covenant business. And it's making people drunk, and they're teaching drunk, and they're living drunk and blind and intoxicated and not giving Yah glory because their pride wants to lift them up into a position that Yah said, not yet. Not yet. Even Messiah, the King of Glory, said, it ain't my time yet. How then, as a wicked people, disenfranchised and scattered to the four corners of the earth and still doing the same stuff, can we sit up and then try to lift and exalt ourselves before the time that Yah says, when we are in the season of giving Yah glory for preserving us as a people? That is pride. And then when people come and they try to say, hey, you probably shouldn't talk to people, and hey, you probably should, then everybody gets mad. You could just leave this fellowship. You can just, this is how we do it here. Wow. Wow, you moved out of glory to arrogance. You moved out of glory, lifting yourself above people, and Yah didn't put you there. Yah says, I raise up and I put down. Pride is when you lift yourself up. There is no inherent novelty and no inherent glory in being Yah's people if Yah's people are not being Yah's people. If we're not obedient, then just like this, he says, they'll walk by and say, this is Zion. This is what Yah set his eye upon. They're not going to see what you read until we put on humility, till we put on obedience. And then Yah lifts us up and we reflect his glory. It's not going to work. It just looks ugly. And drunkenness will have you thinking you look good when you look toe up. Drunkenness will have you thinking people look good when they look toe up. Drunkenness will have you doing things and operating with an intoxicated mind and an intoxicated spirit, and then you'll find yourself in trouble. Drunk off of your own pride because you've removed your glory to exalt yourself. Yah's like, no. No. Absolutely not. So verse 17, he says, shadow of death, verse 16, and he will make it gross darkness. Verse 17, but if you will not hear it, my soul shall weep in secret places for your pride. And my eyes shall weep sore and run down with tears because Yah's flock is carried away captive. He said, there's no other way. So people said, Jeremiah, all he did was cry. If we knew why Jeremiah was crying, we'd cry too. He was like, man, you don't see it. You don't see that the root of it all. People are so caught up in it tickles me on what a person wears and what they're doing with this. And I'm like, but if the pride was down and if the humility was up, you would see a change. We keep trying to point out all of this futile stuff, but then you're okay with literally, and I'm not coming for nobody, it just is what it is. The pride is out of control. It's out of control. You shouldn't just talk to people in the old kind of way. Love don't make you do that. Pride does, though. It's narcissistic. If you want to, it is. That you don't care. It just needs to be said, but it doesn't have to be said like that. You've forgotten yourself and you've put yourself ahead of and in front of Yah. And even Josiah, who was a good king and a good man, when he forgot his covenant business, he died too soon. Our job on this planet, because we don't know when time is going to end, so why reap negative? We may not ever see the promised land. Most of us, probably like Moses, we may get to peek in, but we ain't never going to get to live in. It's not going to happen. It may not happen in our lifetime. So we keep walking forward all outside of our business. And Yah was like, your business is in your mind. It's in your body. It's with your brethren. It's in your home. That is where eternity is anyways. You're judged upon those things no matter where you are. So trying to be or trying to be looked at as something, true. Most of the day, ain't nobody looking at none of us. So what does it matter if somebody on the outside acknowledges who you are when you're really jacking it up on the inside? Where your kids see you, where your spouse sees you, where your friends see you, you're really messing that up real good. Your pride has removed your glory and everybody sees it. Because I'll tell you this, when you start operating like Yah's elect by humbling yourself and being obedient, you won't have to say anything. My mom says something, she says, look. It ain't on you, it's in you. And what's in you will then be on you, and then scripture will reign true because, see, obedience is beautiful. Humility is beautiful. Love is beautiful. Kindness is beautiful. Self-control is beautiful. And against those things, and there's more, there is no law.